On the day I was diagnosed with a brain tumor, I took a photo of myself. The only requirement is to put a smile on my face. Because my whole family doesn't allow me to laugh. My mother hated me for killing her little daughter, and said that my existence made her sick. My father yelled at me and threatened to cut off all ties with me. My brother hated me even more, saying that I was unlucky and wanted me to die outside to avoid dirtying the house. Now, as I was dying, I could finally laugh freely. 1. On my 18th birthday, I was diagnosed with brain cancer. After wandering the streets for a morning, I walked into a photo studio and took a posthumous photo. My only request is to laugh. 2 hours later, the guy who was retouching the photos in the store had a conflicted expression on his face, as if he had finally given up on the pursuit of perfection and was determined to go for broke. Sister, my skills are limited. I can only edit it like this. Can you see if it works? I glanced at the stiffly smiling face on the screen and answered expressionlessly, No. Your smile is so ugly, it's better not to smile at all. The young man had no choice but to ask the boss, who was sleeping on the second floor of the store, to come out and help. Harrison Blake is the best technician. I promised to make it look beautiful for you. I was skeptical, until I saw that my face, which was originally smiling stiffly, seemed to have been transformed, with curved eyes, a smile, and slightly showing teeth. It looks great. I praised him. Great God! The young shop owner named Harrison said lightly, holding a cigarette in his mouth. If you hadn't said these 2 words with a blank expression, maybe I would have believed you a little more. I moved the corners of my mouth, trying to make an arc, but finally gave up in the face of their slightly disgusted looks. The shop assistant quickly spoke up to ease the atmosphere. Such a beautiful ID photo should be kept well. I explained. It's not an ID photo. He casually said, Oh, what is that going to be used for? Me? A portrait. Please make it big. When is the earliest you can come and get it? 2. The young man looked at me with more fear in his eyes. Harrison, who was just about to start a game on the recliner, also frowned slightly and looked at me. He came over and stopped the clerk who was about to start printing. He looked me up and down in silence and asked me, I see you're still young, are you over 18? I blinked. It's just the end of the day. The wrinkles on his brow deepened. Then why did you come to take a posthumous photo? 'Cause I wanted to die. I didn't answer like that to avoid causing more trouble, I just asked. This is my personal privacy. You just need to tell me when I can come and get it, or when it can be made. But it was obvious that the 2 people in front of him didn't buy it. The clerk was afraid that I would be upset, so he threatened that I should call my family and find out the situation. Otherwise, he would not print the photo. I'm so upset. How can there be such a nagging and nosy man? I wanted to run away immediately. Helplessly, I caught a glimpse of the photo of myself on the computer screen, which was looking at me with a slight smile. I really can't bear to do that. Forget it, I may not be able to produce such an effect if I find another one. Helplessly, I took out my phone and sent a message in the family group. Me. Family, I just took a photo of my deceased father. If anyone has time, please help me make a phone call to say hello to the store clerk. 3. The group was quiet. Half an hour later, my brother sent me a message. Withdraw it immediately. You know what day it is today, but you still deliberately say this, Audrey Palmer. You are deliberately trying to make us unhappy, right? There was no expression on my face, and I didn't want to waste energy explaining anything. Me. I just want to take a posthumous photo. Today is also my birthday. But it doesn't matter. My only birthday wish is to have a nice photo of myself. This way I can die with peace of mind. My brother was silent for a few minutes, his tone filled with anger and disappointment. Only the dead take posthumous photos. If you want to take photos, go die. My fingertips paused on the screen. My limbs gradually became cold. And the next second, a line of small words suddenly appeared in the group chat box. You were kicked out of the group chat by the administrator, Dad. The clerk saw me sitting there with my head down for a long time without moving, and thought I was distracted. He came over and touched me, and was about to ask a question, but stopped abruptly when he saw my red eyes. I'm a little annoyed. Crying is the most useless thing. But after so many times, I still can't control it. In front of them, I called my father again. He finally picked up the phone after hanging up 3 times. Before I could say anything, he roared in a muffled voice, "Stop hitting me, your dad is dead." Then he hung up with a click. 2 people in the store. I shrugged and wiped away the slight moisture from the corners of my eyes nonchalantly. See? After sighing, I tried again. I am over 18, and I have the right to make my own decision on this matter. Harrison stared at me in thought for a few seconds. Where's your mother? Give her a shot too. I was silent. He comforted unconsciously. Your mother gave birth to you and raised you. As a mother, she shouldn't be so cruel. As much as he hated to admit it, he was wrong. My mother doesn't allow me to have any contact information with her. What she did was 10 times more cruel than what my father and my brother did. 4. Perhaps they didn't expect my situation to be so complicated, so they finally agreed to help me make it. But before leaving, the shop owner Harrison said something intentionally or unintentionally. Keep your phone open at all times and come pick it up in person in 2 weeks. 2 weeks, does it really take that long? I looked confused. After leaving the photo studio, it was only 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and I went straight to another destination. As the dizziness gradually set in, the phone in my pocket vibrated twice. There were people coming and going on the street. In order to avoid fainting in the street and scaring everyone, I quickly sat down on the spot holding onto the wall. After taking 3 deep breaths and adjusting back and forth, his slightly trembling and numb hands slowly stabilized. I still held a glimmer of hope when I took out my cell phone. In previous years, I would be kicked out and not allowed to go home on my birthday. But every time the day was about to end, even though my brother hated me, he would take the initiative to tell me that I could go home. It is always unsafe for an underage girl to hang out outside for too long. But today, all my hopes were shattered into dust when I read the few words my brother sent me. It's okay that you usually pretend to be sick and miserable to gain sympathy, but you are an adult today, why can't you be more sensible? Today is Violet's birthday, and Mom is in a good mood. Are you deliberately trying to disgust us by taking such an unlucky thing as a posthumous photo? Seeing you like this, don't go home today. Otherwise you will offend Violet and ruin our mood. You can solve it yourself outside. I felt a sharp pain at the tip of my heart, and then my fingers went numb. The Violet he mentioned is called Violet Palmer. Also my sister. She and I are twins. Sometimes I hear from our neighbors that although it was very hard when our mother was pregnant with us, she was happy. I like them regardless of whether they are twins, a boy and a girl, or twin boys and girls. But no one expected that on the day the 2 babies were born, their mother would have a difficult delivery because they were too big. Because I came out earlier than Violet, she was stuck in there for too long, and her face was purple when she came out. It wasn't long before his breathing stopped. From then on, I was labeled a murderer by them. My mother cried heart-wrenchingly while holding Violet, who died young. She looked at me with hatred in her eyes, as if she wished I was the one who died. I was just a baby then. Sometimes he was so hungry that he cried loudly for milk. My mother started screaming like a madman, and she tried to throw me off the stairs. Fortunately, the nurse came and rescued me in time. I never celebrated my birthday in all these years, because today the whole family will celebrate with Violet. As the culprit who killed her, I am not worthy of being in the house. They also naturally thought that I didn't deserve to celebrate my birthday. Suppressed memories flooded into my mind. I pulled the corners of my mouth randomly, smiled bitterly, and replied to him, "Okay, I won't bother you with worrying about whether I'm dead or alive out there." The person on the other end seemed to be choked by me and felt a little embarrassed. The chat dialog box keeps displaying, "The other party is typing." 5 minutes later, 2 words were finally thrown over. Ill. 5. Yes, I am sick. I was just diagnosed with a brain tumor the day before yesterday. When I went to get the report, the doctor looked at me with deep sorrow and said that I had contracted this disease at such a young age, and his face was full of regret. He tried his best to persuade me to stay calm, cooperate with the treatment, and believe that there is still hope. I can't explain how I felt the moment I saw the diagnosis. I just feel that all the entanglements, complaints, unwillingness, struggles, and pain seem to have found a place to go. I breathed a sigh of relief. Now I can finally be free. The old doctor spoke sympathetically. If your parents knew, they would be very sad. I think he is overthinking it. In fact, all this is not without trace. If my parents or my brother had paid more attention to me and noticed something was wrong earlier and brought me for a checkup, perhaps the disease would not have been delayed to the late stage. But in their eyes, my memory loss was called dull and stupid. Headaches and nausea were said to be pretending to be sick to gain sympathy. The first time I had an epileptic seizure at school, my father and brother were on a business trip, and the teacher made more than a dozen phone calls before calling my mother. The moment I saw my relatives, my inner panic began to show a little. But before he could express his grievances, his mother came up and slapped him in the face without any explanation, leaving him stunned. At that time, I was still lying on the hospital bed in the school clinic. She pointed at me and questioned me in front of the principal, teachers, and my classmates. "Will you die if you don't do it? Can you please just shut up? I don't have time to deal with your mess." From then on, I realized how deeply my mother hated me. I stopped showing my vulnerable side in front of them, but my epilepsy was out of control. Every time it comes without warning. Later, I had a few attacks at home, and my father and brother wanted to come and see what was wrong with me. My mother, who was eating at the dining table, told me not to bother with me. So they continued to eat while I lay on the ground twitching. When I came to my senses, the living room was pitch black and my family members had already gone into their rooms to sleep. 6. Just like now, my body is starting to get out of control again. In my confusion, I vaguely heard the chaos around me. There are a lot of people talking. There were also people who kept calling my name, asking me to wake up. Someone held down my hands and feet and pulled me out of the deep sea where I was struggling. I opened my eyes, my voice was hoarse, and I was still a little overwhelmed. Harrison, the owner of the photo studio, was still kneeling on the ground. "Why are you here? What's wrong with me?" The crowd of onlookers had not yet dispersed, and everyone was looking at me with anxious and worried faces. Harrison's forehead was already covered with sweat. It's something I've never seen on any of my family members' faces. I immediately understood. Oh, the epilepsy has struck again. It's really embarrassing to see it on the main road. "Help me up." An old lady who was standing nearby asked worriedly, "Girl, what's your parents' phone number? Do you want to give them a call?" Yes. I've called an ambulance for you. Go to the hospital for a checkup." I declined their offer. "Please, Harrison, take me away." 7. The sky gradually darkened. I looked out the window and sighed. I couldn't register to donate my body today. Harrison sat opposite me. His pair of black eyes seemed to stare through me. "Where are you going tonight?" Half an hour ago, after I firmly refused to go to the hospital for a checkup, Harrison had no choice but to give in and offered to take me home. If it were any other time, I would probably pretend to ask him to send it back in order to avoid trouble. After he leaves, I will find another place to stay. But I really don't have the energy to do it today. To be frank, he has no home to return to. As for why Harrison appeared next to me, he said that it was because he was still uneasy about what I said in the morning about taking a posthumous photo. After I left, he was afraid that I would not keep my promise and jump into the river as soon as I went out, so he followed me from a distance all the way. He didn't rush forward until he saw that I was behaving strangely, and finally fell to the ground convulsing. I praised him again with a blank expression. "You are such a nice person." "No. I'm just afraid that you might commit suicide, and the police will come to question me first." "Haha, just laugh it off." 8. We stayed until the cafe closed. Harrison asked me again what my plans were. I said, "Let's go to the Red Cross and find a place to squat." He frowned slightly. "Why go there? I will register to donate my body tomorrow morning." "Why donate?" "I'm afraid my family won't want to take me in after I die. Even if I die, I'm afraid my body will be eaten by a dog. That's really pitiful." Harrison. Finally, he couldn't bear to see me squatting alone at the door of someone else's company, so he grabbed me by the back of my collar and took me back to his house. "If you don't mind, I can make room for you to sleep in my house." I was shocked. "We are alone, what are you going to do to me?" He looked a little disgusted. "Don't worry, I'm not such a beast as to attack a minor. I'm an adult. I just turned 18 today." He paused in his hurried pace. "Is it your birthday today?" I pursed my lips, and my expression instantly became lonely. "Yeah. Can't I?" "Okay. There are still 5 minutes left. The birthday guy is the oldest." 9. Harrison originally lived with his grandmother. When the old man saw his grandson bringing a girl to his house in the middle of the night, he was so frightened that he didn't know what to do. When he found out that today was my 18th birthday, he insisted on making me a bowl of noodles. After the hot noodles were served, I tried my best to control my hands that were shaking uncontrollably under the table. The familiar feeling came over me again and I felt a little helpless. Keep praying that the disease will not recur at this time. Girl, 18 is a good age. Eat this bowl of longevity noodles and you will live a long and long life. I couldn't hold back my tears. Just don't hold it in. Let it flow out silently. Seeing that I was just staring at my face and crying, but had no intention of picking up my chopsticks, Grandma explained awkwardly, "The dishes and chopsticks are all clean, don't be disgusted." I just shook my head. Harrison teased. "You're not waiting for me to feed you, are you?" I shook my head again. Finally, I couldn't help it, so I pinched my thigh and tried to calm myself down. I slowly picked up the chopsticks with my right hand and tried to pick up the noodles. But Grandma still saw it. "Why are your hands shaking, girl?" I suddenly felt despair, and a strong sense of powerlessness and the sense of grievance that my body could not control suddenly came over me like a tide. Tears fell into the noodles one by one. After an eerie silence, Harrison suddenly laughed and saved the situation for me. She was so touched. But I hadn't finished the bowl of noodles yet, and my brother came over. 10. Come back with me. You have no self-respect for running to a man's house in the middle of the night? Malcolm Palmer's face turned livid and he grabbed me and tried to leave. He has been following his father in business over the years. After being so powerful in the business world for so long, the pressure he exudes just by frowning is enough to make people want to kneel down and admit their mistakes. Stop. But Harrison wasn't afraid of him. He walked forward, his eyes sharp and burning, and asked directly, "You knew your sister wasn't feeling well? Didn't you see she looked weak and pale when you pulled her so roughly?" Malcolm frowned and turned to look at me in silence. Under the pale moonlight, cold sweat broke out on my forehead, my breathing became rapid, and my whole body was shaking slightly. Obviously abnormal. But he still insisted and laughed confidently. She was uncomfortable 8 out of 10 days. She is used to this kind of trick, and she can only deceive people like you. Harrison's expression instantly turned cold, and he stepped forward to stop Malcolm from taking me away. My face was covered with snot and tears, and I shook my head at him with pleading eyes. He is a good man and there is no need for him to get involved in this mess. Malcolm looked even more smug, glared at Harrison fiercely, and turned away. "Follow me." I turned around and took a deep look at Harrison and Grandma who were standing at the door, as well as the unfinished bowl of noodles on the table in the inner room. I sighed. In this life, perhaps no one will ever celebrate my birthday so solemnly again. What a pity. Harrison yelled from the doorway. "Audrey, I'll give you another bowl of longevity noodles next time. Next time I'll pay you back in the next life." 11. Today is my birthday and also the anniversary of Violet's death. I finally stepped into the house after midnight. What's funny is that they made such a fuss about celebrating a dead child's birthday. The room was filled with colorful balloons, decorations, a 2-tiered cake, and gifts piled on the sofa, all of which were new clothes for the baby. I took it so seriously that it seemed as if I were the dead Violet. I once tried to get some love from Violet, but they ended up bashing me to pieces. Just overestimating your own abilities. Mom is in Violet's room, you go in by yourself, I'll pick you up in an hour. The living room was eerily quiet. Only from the room on the left could be heard from time to time the suppressed cries of a woman. Malcolm's tone softened slightly. I looked at him numbly and walked into the room. In fact, on the anniversary of Violet's death, Mom's emotions would become more extreme than usual. In serious cases, it may even lead to self-harm. In order to prevent her from hurting herself and to vent all the emotions trapped in her heart, my father and brother would always push me in to endure my mother's madness every time this happened. An hour later, Dad took away Mother, who was finally tired. My brother found me curled up and shivering in the corner of the closet. There was a hint of pity on his face, and he tentatively reached out to pull me out. I slammed it open and screamed hoarsely, "Don't touch me." He held back, his tone impatient. "Audrey, stop it. If you weren't able to solve your mother's emotional problems, you would have been out of this family long ago." The numb nerve seemed to be touched by a certain word. I moved my eyes slowly and looked at him with despair and disbelief. Turn out to be. Turn out to be. Stop laughing, you are not fit to laugh. Malcolm saw me and twitched his lips, his expression unable to hide his disgust. He almost patiently grabbed my wrist and pulled me out of the cramped and dim closet. I forgot that no one in this family allows me to laugh. I stumbled and my knees hit the floor. The pain that came over me made my eyes clearer. I asked him, "Brother, if I get sick, will you take me to get treated? If I die?" He interrupted me. "Stop talking nonsense. Aren't we good enough for you?" I stopped talking. 12. At 4 in the morning, I locked the door. The bathtub is full of water. He cut his left wrist with a fruit knife. The first time I cut it, my technique was not good enough and it took me several cuts to get it right. It hurt so much. As his body gradually lost temperature, the smiling photo and Harrison's nonchalant face suddenly appeared in his confused mind. What a pity, I have to be the one who breaks my promise. In the dead silent room, a series of rapid telephone rings suddenly rang out. I opened my eyes and found that I was not dead. I closed my eyes again and didn't intend to care. But the ringing was so persistent that it seemed like it would never stop. I sighed and climbed out of the bathtub with difficulty. But his hands and feet were weak and he could only crawl slowly on the cold floor. If I knew which annoying guy called, I would never let him go even if I became a ghost. But the phone was on the cabinet, which was too far away. I ran out of strength when I climbed halfway. Before I lost consciousness, I vaguely saw someone kick open the door and shout my name. Audrey. Teen. I didn't die. When I woke up in the ward, I was surprised to see the 3 members of the Palmer family. That's right, after all, he committed suicide in their home. I have to come and see if he is dead. But the sorrowful and complicated expressions on their faces were too unfamiliar. Harrison said he was worried about me and followed Malcolm downstairs to my house. No one responded to my messages or phone calls. Fortunately, I was allowed to register my address before leaving in the morning. Only then did he go to confirm. What happened is that I cut my wrists and committed suicide, then fell to the ground unconscious. Turns out that the annoying guy was him. All of a sudden I didn't know whether I should praise him as a good person or not. Although I was rescued in time, the excessive blood loss still made me extremely weak. I was exhausted after just a few words. I closed my eyes and waved my hands. "Harrison, let them go. I don't want to see them again. After going through the gates of hell once, I feel more open-minded about everything. I used to wonder why my parents didn't love me, and why they cared so much about a dead child. I have tried, strived, and desired, but since they are unwilling to give me this love, I don't want it either." Malcolm came up to me and called out to me, his eyes sad. "Audrey, why didn't you tell us you were sick? Why are you so stupid? Why would you commit suicide?" He has always been a person who pays attention to his appearance and manners. But this time, for the first time ever, he came out in pajamas and pants, and he didn't even trim the stubble on his face. I found it funny and remained silent without responding to him. At this time my mother, who had been silent for a long time, spoke. It was the first time I saw her call my name so calmly. "Audrey." Her voice choked up. "Mom apologizes to you for what happened last night. The doctor said that as long as you actively treat your brain tumor, you can still live for a few years. When we get back, we will find a good doctor to treat you, okay? I've already lost one daughter, I can't lose another." The mother became more and more excited as she spoke, and when she mentioned the dead Violet, her emotions suddenly broke down and she fell into her father's arms and cried. Dad couldn't bear it and said something. "Yes, Dad has money, so it doesn't matter how much the treatment costs. As long as our family is well, that's enough." I smiled bitterly, and tears quietly flowed down my face without me noticing. I raised my hand and couldn't wipe it all off. What a loser. "It's too late," I murmured, my eyes empty. "Too late. You said you didn't want to lose another daughter, but what were you doing earlier?" Tears burst out suddenly and could not be stopped. I cried and shook all over and screamed at them. I just felt that their current behavior was ironic and disgusting. Have you ever really treated me as a family member in all these years? Have you? I am just a murderer in your eyes. What qualifications do I have? What qualifications do you have to say such things? I don't want you anymore. I don't want anything anymore. Is that enough? Go away, go away. I don't want to see you again. As a result of being too emotional, my epilepsy recurred. The moment I fell down, I saw the Palmer family rushing to my bed with terrified faces. It's really strange. 14. I was sent to the emergency room. Cancer cells spread quickly. The doctor issued an emergency notice, saying that if no treatment was given, the disease would break out at any time. My parents couldn't accept this result and they seemed to have aged 10 years in an instant. Malcolm took on the responsibility of the entire family, mobilized all his connections, and ran around to find a professional and capable medical team for me. But by that time, I had already escaped from the hospital carrying them on my back. Harrison used to live a peaceful and carefree life, but unfortunately he met me and was dragged into this mess. So I let him go that night. While he was away, she picked up her phone and left the hospital. I went to the Red Cross to register to donate my body. When he came out, he was caught by Harrison, who was waiting at the door. This is the haunting. He narrowed his eyes slightly, rode a motorcycle, supported his long legs on the ground, and looked at me with an unfriendly expression. Where are you going? Come up, I'll take you back to the hospital. I ignored him expressionlessly and walked straight past him. No, it's incurable. Go home and stop following me. Harrison got out of the car and simply walked slowly with me. Have you really had enough of living? You haven't eaten the longevity noodles I promised to make for you yet. You want to cancel my date? My grandma always talks about you. You are such a heartless girl. I slowly stopped. My eyes were red and I said this in a stubborn manner. Lead the way. I'm doing this for Grandma's sake. For the first time, I felt the warmth of a family member from that strange old man. 15. But the noodles will eventually run out. I put down my chopsticks and was about to say goodbye to them. Harrison added, There's a new arcade opening nearby, do you want to go and play? Harrison is such a scheming person. I can't beat him at all. After going to the video game arcade, he took me to eat ice cream. After eating the ice cream, he asked me if I wanted to go to the beach to watch the sunset. When I came to my senses, the man was already on the back seat of his motorcycle, speeding along the coastal road. The sunset begins to appear in the sky at around 4 or 5 in the afternoon. The sound of the wind whistling in my ears took away my fear. What greets you is the vast expanse of orange sunset where the sea and the sky meet. Magnificent and beautiful. So sad. I will never see such a beautiful scenery again. Harrison saw what I was thinking, straightened my shoulders and looked serious. Audrey, why don't you try to live again? You're only 18. You haven't started college yet, you haven't fallen in love yet, and you haven't seen the world yet. Before you turn 18, you live for them. But after you turn 18, you should live for yourself. His eyes were heavy, even if it's only for a few years. Don't give up your life for those who don't love you. They don't deserve it, and they don't have the qualifications. On the way back, I lay on Harrison's back and felt drowsy. He said jokingly with a smile, Anyway, my grandmother always wanted a granddaughter. Why don't you be my sister? Brother loves you. I was too exhausted to respond to him. What kind of sister? He was stunned for a moment, then laughed out of anger when he realized what was happening. You are so young, but you think so impurely? I silently pulled the corners of my mouth and my eyelids were heavy. I have clearly felt that my physical fitness has declined a lot in the past few days. I often feel exhausted, become more sleepy, and my memory is not so good. There were 2 cars parked next to the motorcycle. They were the Palmer family who came looking for me after they found out I was missing. Malcolm had black and blue eyes and looked much more haggard. When my mother saw how pale and weak I looked, she couldn't help crying and came forward to touch me. I opened my eyes and looked away expressionlessly. Please respect yourself, lady. She was shocked, her expression was hurt, and she cried and confessed to me. It was always my mother's fault. Violet's death was a huge blow to me and I couldn't accept it. Over the years, whenever I woke up in the middle of the night, I could always hear Violet's little body crying to me. I couldn't sleep all night long. I can't be nice to you with a clear conscience. I'm afraid that Violet will come into my dream at night and question me, asking me why she was the one who died. All the grievances and pain hidden deep in her heart were vented out, and my mother fell to the ground crying. She kept saying that she was too confused and that she was wrong, and that God wanted to punish her by making her lose her 2 daughters. Audrey, can you please give your mother another chance to correct her mistakes, please? I looked away. What's the point of saying these things now? I told her. It has nothing to do with me. My mother put all the blame for Violet's early death on me in order to feel at ease. My father and brother, out of consideration for my mother's emotions and feelings, forced me to bear it and not resist. There is no last resort. They just don't love me. 16. The administrator dad added me back to the family group. My mother also took the initiative to add me on WeChat. When I first joined the group, they sent welcome and happy emoticons in succession to celebrate my return to this family group. I tapped the keyboard with my fingers, left a sentence and decisively left the group. Your daughter is dead, don't contact me anymore. Then go back to the friend verification page, and a line of words will be sent on it. Audrey, I am your mother, please pass me. I responded directly. I don't have a mother. Then I blocked and deleted the 3 of them, cutting off all contact. After doing all these things, I sighed and said to Harrison, now there's really no one to collect my body. Fortunately, I registered the body in advance. Harrison flicked his finger gently on my forehead. I'm not a human. 17. I started chemotherapy. I admit that what Harrison said touched me. I was 18 that year and had just finished the college entrance examination. Although my grades aren't very good, I can still go to university. If you are lucky, you can meet an outstanding boy and have an unforgettable love. I just don't know if Harrison will break his legs. Because of the treatment, I shaved my head, and my head felt round and cold. Harrison thought it was cute, but I thought it was ugly. Many times when I went to bed at night, I secretly wiped away tears thinking about my dead hair. The next day he bought me 7 hats. Wear red, orange, yellow, green, blue, and purple in different colors every day. I really want to thank him. Radiotherapy was very tiring. I slept all day long and left the ward less and less. She lost weight rapidly and her skinny appearance was mocked by Harrison as being too thin. I gave him a fake smile, and he praised me for being good at laughing and smiling more. It looks much better than what I did. I asked him how the progress of the posthumous portrait was going. He was practicing Tai Chi and said that the guy in the store had gone back to his hometown for the holiday, so the portrait would be available later, so he asked me to wait a little longer. You're a liar. Because I blocked all contact information of the Palmer family, they didn't dare to provoke me anymore. Knowing that I didn't like them, they just prepared meals for me and waited for me at the ward door every day. But I never let them in once. That noon, when I was pulled into the operating room again due to the alarm, the doctor had a heavy face. A critical illness notice was issued. My mother knelt at the door of the operating room without any image and kept praying that nothing would happen to me. What they were holding in their hands was the amulet they had obtained overnight at Union Temple in the neighboring city by kowtowed every 3 steps. Daddy was kneeling at the door with her. Malcolm waited there in a daze, no longer as high-spirited as before. 18. I don't know how, but my soul floated out of the operating room. When I saw this scene, I felt no wavering at all. I looked around for Harrison. Finally, he was found in the fire stairwell. His face looked serious, completely different from the relaxed and casual appearance he usually showed in front of me. Holding a cigarette between fingers but not smoking, just letting it burn quietly. So he was afraid that I would die. In the other hand, he was holding something which he was looking at repeatedly. I moved closer, a little stunned. It's my posthumous photo, made into a small 1-inch style. It was not the black and white I expected, but bright and saturated colors. I look bright and generous in the photo, and I look very good. Before I was 18, my life was like a posthumous photo, dark and depressing without any brilliance. It turns out that my life can be so bright, dazzling and brilliant. When I floated back, there was a familiar face in the corridor. It was my sophomore homeroom teacher, Mr. West. She was passing by fetching water and accidentally heard my name from their mouths. When I came over and saw that it was my parents, and then I looked at the light on in the operating room, and then I understood everything. From her, they learned more about me. 19. Audrey is a lonely child. She never smiles at school. Not only did her classmates not like her, but even some of her teachers disliked her. They privately call her facial paralysis. It was only after I got to know her in depth that I realized why she became like this. In the final analysis, it was all because of you as parents. Do you know that she has gone up to the rooftop of the school building several times without warning? I sat there for most of the day. Everyone thought she was going to jump off the building, so scared that the police and firefighters came. I called you several times to ask you to come to school to talk about Audrey's mental problems, but you all either said she was playing a prank or used work as an excuse to refuse. You never came to school, including the several times she had seizures at school. No one of you has ever been here before. No, you have been here before. Teacher Kong suddenly pointed at the mother who was crying and about to faint. You come and slap her. She sighed deeply. I'm telling you, how can you be someone else's parent? Stop talking, stop talking. It's our fault, it's all our fault. We are the ones who let Audrey down. Dad cried and held his head in his hands, unable to bear any more blows. Malcolm suppressed his guilt and kept comforting them. Finally, a nurse came over and warned the family members not to make loud noises. The scene was chaotic for a while. 20. Throughout the summer, I underwent 3 chemotherapy sessions, each lasting 3 to 5 days. The condition was finally brought under control. He has lost a lot of weight. Harrison could easily pick me up with one hand. Ever since Grandma Harrison learned that I was sick and hospitalized and as thin as a monkey, she took great pains to make chicken soup and prepare meals for me every day. My mother does it every day, but I don't want to do it. Harrison's grandmother was very proud of this. Only the girl who eats the food I make will eat it. She doesn't like her mother and thinks she is unworthy of being a parent. What's the point of admitting your mistakes and apologizing afterwards? Can the harm caused over the past 18 years be undone by just an apology? Grandma is old. You should tell her not to come and pick her up every day. I'm worried that her health won't be able to handle it. The food was actually delicious, but it left a bitter taste in my mouth and I couldn't taste anything. He raised an eyebrow. I tried to persuade him, but it didn't work. The feeling of stomach discomfort gradually came over me. I frowned, slowly swallowed the food in my mouth and said calmly, "Please ask the nurse when I can be discharged from the hospital." Harrison didn't think much about it, just nodded and went out. As soon as the people left, my stomach churned and a feeling of nausea hit me. Before I could even open the trash can under the bed, I vomited out all the food I had just eaten with great difficulty. I asked and the nurse said. Harrison's voice stopped abruptly. I lay on the edge of the bed for a long time without moving. He took one look at the filth on the floor and immediately understood. He picked up the tools skillfully and started cleaning. You sent me away on purpose, didn't you? I didn't move. He gently lifted me up and saw my face covered with tears, somewhat helpless and a little funny. Why are you crying? I burst into tears. I made a mess on the floor. I wanted to vomit in the trash can, but I didn't have time. I'm so useless. Sorry. He wiped my face with a tissue. If you really feel sorry for me, don't let me send you away next time. Okay. 21. The day I was discharged from the hospital, Harrison wrapped me tightly. Malcolm was waiting at the hospital entrance with his parents, holding a bouquet of flowers and a fruit basket. As soon as we came out, they came up to me cautiously and begged me if they could go home with them. You don't want to see anything related to Violet. We have already cleaned it up. Your room has been cleaned for you. Come home with Mom and Dad, Audrey. I frowned. You guys moved my room? Right. As soon as I said this, everyone remembered the time when I cut my wrists in the room. Then you should have seen my letter breaking off the relationship. The night I decided to die, I left them this letter. I ended this relationship myself. I didn't die once. Malcolm's mother looked shocked and confused, and obviously had no idea what I was talking about. Only Malcolm looked pale. It seemed that he was hiding this matter. I'm too lazy to pursue the matter and don't want to get entangled with them anymore. I told you your daughter is dead. Please stop disturbing my life. I really don't want to see you again. Malcolm was broken by my resolute attitude. He asked loudly at my back, Audrey, what do you want me to do in order for you to forgive us? I turned back slowly word by word. Never forgive. Even if a person is broken once, there is still hope. Broken countless times, no more expectations. The university I applied to is local. The major is Modern Funeral Technology and Management, which is the so-called embalmer. I didn't tell anyone about this. I only found out about this when Harrison took me to report for admission and saw the admitted majors. You don't ask me why? It was still autumn, but the students around me were only wearing thin coats. And I have already put on a flannel hat and a scarf. I blinked and looked over at Harrison. After all, this industry is not favored and opposed by ordinary people. Harrison smiled. I wanted to ask you a question. Are you willing to tell me? What's wrong with you? I first learned the word undertaker when someone verbally attacked me. At the Palmer household, my mother wouldn't allow me to laugh, because in their eyes I was a murderer, and my laughter would hurt their eyes. My dad also didn't let me laugh, and told me to be sensible and not make my mom angry. My brother hates me and says that I only have a sullen face and look unlucky. My classmates gave me this nickname: facial paralysis, faceless monster, little monster. You might as well become an undertaker and deal with the dead. You can't laugh anyway. Harrison and I walked slowly on the school path. Feeling the lively atmosphere around me, I felt a rare sense of relaxation. Later, I actually searched for this job. To be honest, I was scared at first. But then I thought, I'm going to die anyway, and I suddenly felt that there's nothing to be afraid of. That's right, I won't be called a weirdo if I don't smile. Harrison interrupted me for the first time and corrected me seriously. Laughing is everyone's right. You can laugh anytime you want. I didn't refute him but just curved my eyebrows and smiled a little. Now I feel that the profession of undertaker has its greatness. Everyone dies. The undertaker is the angel who is responsible for welcoming the deceased to heaven in a dignified manner. If I'm lucky. I walked to the courtyard building unconsciously. I looked at the tall and magnificent courtyard building and said deeply, I will be one of those angels. 22. Harrison's perspective. As soon as Audrey finished her midterm exam in her freshman year, she couldn't wait to rush home from school. Because today is my 26th birthday. She said that I celebrated her 18th birthday and she couldn't miss it no matter what, as it was her first birthday after knowing me. The weather was gradually turning colder. The girl was already weak, and even though she was wrapped tightly from head to toe, her palms were still cold. It took a long time to warm it up. She insisted on cooking for me and making longevity noodles. This little girl, doesn't she know her own physical condition? I felt tired after just a few moves. In the end, I was responsible for making 3 bowls of noodles. Grandma sat on the recliner and watched us happily. Audrey said she hadn't eaten such delicious noodles for a long time, and she missed the taste for a long time when she was in school. She smiled and said that she should come back once a week in the future. Otherwise, she would lose her room if she didn't come back for a long time. Don't worry, your room is under the watchful eye of Grandma. No one dares to move. Later, she got tired of eating and had less and less strength to speak. In the end, I was so tired that I just fell asleep on the table. Grandma doted on Audrey and scolded her with laughter, saying that Audrey was like a little piglet who would sleep after eating. But she slept for a long, long time. It lasted so long that Grandma felt something was wrong, and no matter how hard she tried to pat her, she couldn't wake her up. She asked me tremblingly, Harrison, Audrey, what happened to her? The noodles in the bowl were completely cold. I stared at Audrey's calm and peaceful sleeping face for a long time before I spoke slowly. She's so tired, Grandma. Let her sleep. 23. The Palmer family found it hard to accept the news of Audrey's death. He insisted on taking her body back for funeral. I didn't agree, because the Red Cross brought special people to take her body away. The man named Malcolm even tried to fight with them. Finally, I learned from them that Audrey had donated her body. His parents also heard it and both fainted on the ground. Audrey, you are so cruel that you didn't even want to leave us your body. Malcolm completely broke down and kept talking to himself. I didn't care about them anymore. I went back to the store. In fact, I have not printed out the photo yet. Unlucky. This time I printed it out myself in color. If you don't give it to Palmer's family, keep it at home. In the days that followed, I returned to my daily routine of going between home and the store. I just heard that Audrey's mother seemed to be mentally ill and became crazy. She would run around the streets all day long and grab everyone she met to ask if they had seen her daughter. A daughter named Audrey who doesn't like to laugh. Later, He was sent to a mental hospital by the Palmer father and son. One afternoon I was lying in a rocking chair playing games. A gust of wind rang the bell hanging on the door. I looked up and vaguely remembered the question Audrey asked me. Audrey. Harrison, I have nothing to do with you. I am just one of the many guests. Why did you follow me that day? Me. Maybe you forgot, but I always remember it. That day, she was supposed to leave but suddenly came back, startling the wind chimes hanging at the door. The way you looked at me when you were standing at the door made me feel like you were asking for help.